Okay, hello everybody again. This is a continuation of our discussion about disruptive teens and how parents can get their control back. Um, Last week we talked about teens being reckless in the downtown area of Chicago, and I said this is not the first time. It's just happening downtown now. It's been happening in our neighborhoods, specifically Hyde Park, that I witnessed for a couple of years now. It just got big. So this is just a reminder of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Please disperse. No loitering. 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 Please disperse.
Wow.
Loitering. No.
It's
That's pretty
crazy.
sad.
We
You-
have lost complete control of
Yeah.
some of our
Yeah.
teenagers. And again, this was the weekend. It was um it was nighttime on the weekend, so they had nothing to do with school. This had to do with, do you know where your children are?
Mm.
And if parents didn't know where their children was, then they need to know. They need to ask themselves why. So parents have they have relinquished control, and they need to get it back.
Yes.
Yeah. They have lost their power as a parent. So how do we get it back?
Yeah, that's such a power-filled, power-packed question that I'm sure all of us have had to look at and probably have come up with not so many solutions as to what really would work. And so thank you, Elisa, we're all at the drawing board trying to figure this thing out, because it seems that, for one, it's gotten bigger than the best of us. And I think what we're saying, definitely we got to go back to the source. If you're going to catch, you got to go back to the head, not the tail, the head. And so everything always goes back to the home, because charity begins at home. Everything starts at home. So we looked at it, and I looked at it and I said, wow, for me, what resonates for me, and I look at the discipline and the training. And a lot of times we may think, I think with our children is that perhaps because it's such a huge numbers of us who are teen mothers, who are young mothers, who have lost a lot of the benefits and grace that comes through having older grandparents, and those who have gone around the sun enough times to be able to speak on what's at hand and what's before us. So I looked at discipline. And I said, well, let me look at that, because what I do believe that the lack of discipline is running rampant in our homes. The lack of training is running rampant in our homes. And all of that plays into a part, perhaps, of why our children are out there or outside at all times of night. Children as young as 9 and 10 years old. Where are you, mother? Where are you, father? So when you look at, I said, let me look at discipline. So when I think about discipline to me, in Latin, it says to teach. And the whole idea of discipline is to correct and adapt undesirable behavior. It's a learned behavior. It's not something that's innate or that we come here with. It's a learned behavior. So when our children are born, we have such high hopes for them. But those high hopes require pruning, and they require maintenance, and nurturing and all of those things to make sure that we can grow up a very powerful tree or plant. And so it needs pruning and it needs caring. And that's so it is with our children. And so learning of discipline is to teaching them how to be responsible with responsible behavior and to understand and know how to manage self-control concerns. So I think that that's one of the biggest problems that we suffer for in our essential social unit. It's a lack of discipline with our children, and therefore the lack of training. The two are not the same. Training is something that's quite a bit different, though they overlap. The two overlap tremendously to the point where perhaps they seem like they are the same, but they're not, because training is repetitious. It's consistent, and actually discipline is too. So that, but it's being consistent, it's being concise, it's being clear, it's having consequences, it's having direction. So I think those kind of elements, if we could bring those kind of elements back into the home, we're beginning the process of taking our power back.
Yeah.
What y'all think?
Well, I think last week, Jamila and April mentioned that it takes a village to raise a child. And we know that parents are busy doing this and that. We all were just trying to make the quality of our lives better, going to school, going to work, and all of that. So we have to understand that in order to help relieve some of that stress of having to do everything, because it used to be there was a mother in the home all day. But, that's not so anymore. So we got to figure out who can be part of the village for our child. The phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, it started, we all know, it's an African proverb, and it conveys a message that it takes many people to be the village for our children, to provide a safe and healthy and disciplined environment for our kids, where our children are feeling secure, and they need to develop the kind of security that they need to develop and flourish in. And we just have to figure out how to introduce, how to look around us, who is around us that can help us with that.
One of the things that I would like to point out is how you have to work with what you have as you look around to see who can help you. Sometimes you will run into that person in the least likely place, a laundromat or a grocery store or a church or something of that nature. We need to understand that we model behavior and emotions for our children, where we may tell them to do something, and we'll have rules, and those rules will stem with discipline. But if we ourselves are not modeling that behavior or that criteria, then the children may or may not be listening to you, but they certainly are more prone to model behavior and model emotions versus the spoken word of them. And children are also very creative or very intuitive in how they can make us or lead us to believe that they are listening and that they are doing certain things that they know that they should do. They know what the rules are. They know right from wrong. However, if, for example, mom and dad are fighting all the time or arguing all the time, they're prone to be argumentative themselves. Or if mom or dad is sad all the time. I had a son to tell me that I was telling him one thing, but he was looking at my face. He said, so if I looked worried, he was worried. Because he said, well, if she's worried, then I'm worried too. And I also noticed that when I'm concentrating, as most of us are, when we're concentrating on something, we have this very serious face. And I notice that my grandson will come up to me when I'm reading something or looking at something or focused on something, and he'll grab my face and tell me to smile or say, I'm going to give you a hug. I'm going to give you a kiss. Or he'll ask me, are you happy? And he's 3. They model behavior. And I also wanted to point out, so since the parents are the ones who set the rules for discipline and set the rules for teaching, and the ones who are in charge of everything, as Michelle pointed out, they're busy with everything. The parents are busy with everything. If there's 1, if there's 2, and certainly they're busy if it requires a village, yet there may be only 1 or only 2, then that parent, as well as any members of a village, but that parent certainly needs to know and understand that it's okay and very necessary to love themselves. That builds the self-esteem. Self-esteem is your value and your respect for yourself. Your emotional intelligence is your mental health. It ties into your mental health. Forgiveness, just going over some things that I mentioned before really quickly. Forgiveness, or the lack of forgiveness, and guilt, those things build anxiety, they build depression, they require a lot of energy. They actually, negative things and negative emotions and negative thoughts require more energy than the positive, because positive gives, whereas the negative takes away. So parents need to be sure to take some time for themselves to clear their minds, to reassess, to remind themselves that it's okay. Love yourself too. You can't give away all of your love to everyone and everything and not love yourself. That's like feeding everyone and everything and not feeding yourself.
Yeah.
So when I come back around, I want to talk about some things that we can do as parents, or that parents can do, individuals can do, that don't cost a lot of money, because it's easy to find things that cost money, right?
That's good, April. That's a good point.
Well,
What you
for,
think,
for,
TJ?
well, for me, I've talked about time management before, and it's essential to have a schedule. You need to be inclusive with your teens, your children, and remind them that they're part of a unit, they're part of the family. So they need to have some input also. And you need to discuss. I know the end thing is negotiate. I won't go there, with your children about certain things. But I have some questions, Does your children, do your teens, do they have responsibilities at home? We grew up in an era where the oldest child watched the younger children, and that's kind of, where we learned our parenting skills, sharpened our skills, because we always had somebody we were responsible for. I know I had young siblings, and I had to take them everywhere that I went. There was no going out the house without my ducks, at home. Do you have a schedule? When do your children do homework? When they come home from school, what's the first things that they need to do? Do they have a clear understanding on that? Do they understand if they don't meet your expectations, what you all have discussed, what's the consequences? You have to discuss with them, what do you like? What are your social activities? What are you trying to get involved in? And with all this technology, you have to be aware of what they're watching.
Yes.
Who they're watching.
Yeah.
What they're listening to, who they're listening to, and how does it affect them? Sometimes I watch some TV with my grandchildren, and I mean my older adult grandchildren. And it was funny because my granddaughter said, well, I know you like some wretched TV sometime. She said, but this is too wretched for you to watch. You know, she said, so I'm going to change the channel because you don't need to watch it. So they do absorb some of the things that we're giving them, but
Mhm.
you have to have that open discussion with them. You have to have them be accountable for their
Yeah.
actions in the home. So when they go outside of the home, they are also responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you thought about back in the day, I remember when we came home from school, and for me, we had a large household. It was 11 of us. But when we come home, we automatically knew that you came in the house, you changed out of your school clothes into your play clothes. And then she may be cooking, but we had to come and sit down. Sometimes he may let us watch Garfield Goose or Rocky and Bullwinkle or somebody. But for the most part, we had to sit down with our books, our paper, and you did homework before you did anything else. But we had a schedule, and we knew that schedule. So because it was over and over, it was regimented. And you come in the house, you do this, and it was a rich time for us growing up like that. We don't have those kind of moments like that today, or very few of them.
Yeah, and then in thinking about the village that our children need, because they just don't need us. They need other people around them. Jamila talked a lot about extended family that lived around her. And so they also, since we don't have that anymore, because I was raised in a house with a lot of people. There was 9 children and a bunch of adults. There was always an adult who could help me do homework and, talk to me about this, that, and the other. But now that doesn't necessarily happen. So we need to uh, think about who can help make up the village. So I'm suggesting that mentoring can help. Mentoring, it does a lot of things. At its core, it guarantees that for young people, it guarantees for them that somebody is there who cares about them. We had our extended families, our older cousins, our uncles, our aunts, and even our neighbors, but they don't have that anymore. So they need to know that somebody cares about them. It assures them that they are not alone in dealing with all this day-to-day struggle and challenge that they deal with, we all deal with, and it makes them feel like they matter. They need to know that they matter. Those kids downtown down there, they didn't know that they mattered. There is a disconnect. Research says that good quality mentoring relationships has a powerful effect on young people in different ways, in their personal life, their academic life, and in the professional lives that they're going to have soon. A teenager will have a professional life soon, and mentoring helps. Ultimately, it helps a young person to develop personally and socially and economically. It helps open up the doors of opportunity in those areas for our children. Mentoring is a critical asset to building the village that these teenagers need. It helps them provide meaningful connections to people that are involved in their life. And I suggest we start with our families, the ones that don't live with us. There are people that do love our kids. Start with them. You never know what they'll be able to do to help.
But I think too, in the homes, we must be very clear about our expectations for our children, our expectations, and to be very clear on that. And especially when we're talking about disciplining, because disciplining does not have to be punitive. It should not be to that degree. And thank you that we do employ restorative practices with dealing with trying to find solutions, because we need solutions to this. And I think if we talk about discipline and how does that structure, Where's the clarity behind that? Is it consistent? Whatever your discipline is with your child, are you consistent in that? And then what are the consequences? When they're good, what are the consequences? When they are bad, what are the consequences?
Mhm.
You know, and so we need to understand the behavior. Let's validate the feelings that they're having with these, with whatever these, we have to validate them because they're their feelings and that's their truth. But we don't validate the behavior or the actions, you know. And so then how do we, if this child is out, you want to give him a chance to process whatever's going on for him, but you put a timeline on that. You know, okay, you're out of sorts right now. Let's see what we can do, but you can't stay out of sorts. We got to work this out so that we can move forward. And then what are choices? Just like you talk about, find out where their passions are, and let's offer them choices. Do our children have choices outside of popping out the apps and whatever on what are the choices? How creative are they? Because if they're always with the phone in their hand, they're not being creative at all. Take the phone away from them. Let's see how creative they can be. How can they find ways to fill up their time? So with gaining our power back, we got to learn, number one, as parents, how to redirect behaviors. How do we return those behaviors that are unwarranted over to something else? And then how do we inculcate positive reinforcements for them? What does that look like from one child to another? Instead of time out, let's have time in. Let's spend time with the children. How much time do you actually spend with your child from the time they come home from school, do whatever they do, and then get ready for bed? How much time do we really invest in them? And then again, empathy, not sympathy.
What's the difference?
But I think with empathy, that we can relate and become a part of the experience, to be in it, or to be of it, but not in it. And then whereas sympathy to me would have a tendency of debilitating you if you don't know how to put under it, girded with the type of strategies and supports that you need to help propel you forward. I hope I made sense on that.
You did. You absolutely.
That made sense.
Okay.
I'd like to speak really quickly to your comment about discipline doesn't have to be a negative experience or a harsh experience.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did for discipline was exercise, even though I believed in that anyway. So we had that as a part of our life. But I would make my sons do maybe sit-ups or push-ups, and when they got strong at that, or squats, and when they would build their stamina for that, then I would add a number to it if that came around again.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, well, I always kept encyclopedias, even though research at the library and research on computers was becoming more popular. I still kept a set of encyclopedias and various books. I love books. I would randomly pick a book. Sometimes I would allow them to pick their own book, but it was always random how I would just open up the book and say, okay, you have to copy 5 of these pages or 10 of these pages, exactly what it says word for word. And I have to be able, it has to be legible. Mm-hmm. And if it isn't legible, I'm going to make you write the whole thing over again.
Right.
And one of the things that they started doing was helping each other with that. They would ask, well, can I help him? Because they couldn't have any other fun activities until that was completed. So that was in addition to homework that they already had. They didn't like that. That was their least favorite. They would ask me, can you do anything else to me? Can I do anything else? That also helped them to make better choices because they really didn't like having to copy out of the book. It also taught them some things. They would tell me some things that they learned. And I wanted to speak to the village, the building of a village. One of the things that I had my sons to do, because they had, Michelle at one point recommended to me to get them into some after school activities, team activities, where they were right there in the school preferably, so they wouldn't have to travel anywhere else until I was able to go and pick them up. When they were in these activities, they still sometimes would get finished before I was done with work or school. So I told my sons to look around or to recognize kids that they got along with. And if they got along with those kids, then I wanted to meet those kids' parents.
Mhm.
And that was how I kind of built a village, or they helped me to build a
Yeah,
village for them.
that was a
And I
good
also
idea.
want to
That's
point out
great.
one more thing. Our villages are built by people who are helping us. Like when I was in elementary school, my mother wasn't interested in my writing, but I was interested in writing. So I had two angel teachers, Miss Vale, my sixth grade teacher, and Mrs. Linda, my eighth grade teacher, seventh and eighth grade teacher. I remember their names like right off the top of my head. They made themselves a part of my village because they recognized what my assets were, and they helped me tremendously. So sometimes our village members come and go, of course, right?
Yeah,
But
definitely.
that's a way to help build your village, is to ask your kids, but you have to always meet families yourself and perhaps spend time with them to be sure
Yeah, yeah,
that that your kids are safe.
definitely. You definitely have to make sure kids are safe. And so I was thinking about ways that parents can help to vet the people that they invite into their child's village. They have to be vetted. We have to consider even family members and friends and
Absolutely.
we have to consider and vet them. We have to be sure that whoever the candidate is for mentoring and inviting them into our children's village, that they're good candidates that have the same or similar values that we have in our households. They have to be a good influence on our children. They have to not have so much sympathy, feeling sorry and pity for them, but to have empathy for them, to develop an emotional connection where they want to help and influence them. We have to be able to trust a mentor and know that they will steer this fragile teen down the right path, because our teens are fragile. We have to make it very comfortable for our children to be able to talk to us about their experiences with these people that we put around them. The people that we surround our children with must be scrutinized and checked out before we leave them alone with
Yeah.
our children. And we have to remain involved in those mentoring relationships. And we have to make it very comfortable for our children to come talk to us about what happens during those times that they are with a mentor. When I think about doing a check-in, I think about asking, using a restorative practice called PIES. So how are you physically? How are you intellectually? How are you emotionally and spiritually? So using that pie system to help our children talk to us about their mentoring experiences, because sometimes when we are in a rush to allow a particular person to be a part of our child's village, we are in a rush and we don't vet them enough. And later on, we find out that they were not safe physically. They were not safe intellectually. They were not safe emotionally or spiritually. So it's very important that we create a system, and that I don't think that there is a system that can be used for everybody. And as a matter of fact, if you have 3 children, those 3 children might have different mentors in their village. So all 3 children may have different people in their village, and they all have to be vetted, and we talked about listening to our children a couple of times. They have to be comfortable in knowing that we will listen and we will hear what their experiences are and what they have to say about these different situations that we place them in.
And I believe the twin flame to that is also teaching your teens how to network.
Mm-hmm.
You know, fill their circle in. You know, you need to know who their friends are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are their friends bringing to the table?
Mm-hmm.
You know, do they have shared values? You know, is this somebody that my teen can talk to openly and honestly? You know, because we never want to think about our teen being influenced, but they are. They're influenced by a lot of different things.
Yeah.
You know, media, those who are in their circle at school, those who are in their circles in the neighborhood. You know, if the teen works part-time, you know, it's his work social circle. You know, so we have to teach them the benefits of networking,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and also the liabilities that can come with it also. You know, if you have somebody that's constantly pulling on you and not supporting and lifting you up, is that really a benefit?
Right.
So these are things that we still, you know, as parents, as the parental influence, we have to have those conversations. We have to model them, and we have to be clear to them, because there are adverse consequences. You know, I used to tell my sons, you know, if you're in a car with somebody and some kind of crime is committed, even though you're just in the car getting a ride, you know, you could be charged. You can't just hop in a car. And that's just an example, but it also leans into, you know, their social circle.
Yeah.
Who's their network? Who are they leaning into? Who are they discussing things with?
Mm-hmm.
Who has their ear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to wrap this up, I want to say that there are some characteristics to being a mentor. So if anybody is listening to us and wants to be a mentor to a child around them, they have to be a good listener. Being a listener is very important. They have to be able to give constructive feedback and not criticize our children. Constructive feedback is necessary as we learn, as we all learn. We have to be able to take constructive feedback, but we don't need to be criticized. So if you're listening, you want to be a mentor, you can't be one who is constantly criticizing our children, and parents need to look for that. A good mentor has to be one that takes personal interest in being a mentor. The role takes a personal, it's a responsibility. It's like a teacher without a degree and a certificate. There needs to be a certificate program in mentoring. We should create one. You as a mentor need to be enthusiastic about your role. One thing we don't need our children to be around is a sourpuss. We need our children to be around happy, joyful, productive, confident people, demonstrating a positive outlook that inspires them. Our children need to be inspired. Those kids downtown and in other neighborhoods, they're not inspired to do or to be anything. They need inspiration. A mentor has to be able to treat them with respect. Yes, they are children, they are teens, and they should respect others, but they also deserve respect. It goes both ways. and they have to be skilled in something. What is it that you are teaching our children? As a mentor, what are you teaching? Parents, what is a mentor teaching your child? That's what a mentor does. Helps them with homework, helps them play their instrument better, help them become a better writer. You know, it's you have to be able to teach them something and demonstrate a responsibility for this young person, because when you mentor correctly, when children are mentored in the correct way, in a loving way, respectful way, then they do better in school. There is research that says that a child who has a good mentor or two, they are least likely to cut a class or to cut school. And a mentor again has to be non-judgmental, expertise in some field, take pride in their work as a mentor.
Yeah.
Proud to be a mentor of our young people.
And I want to piggyback on that and definitely agree that we do need mentors. We need the mentors in the homes, in the schools, in the communities, and to understand that our first mentorship begins with us.
Yes,
We're the first respondents.
Yes.
Responders. We are. And so we have to really get what that looks like and really what does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, because I think seriously, when we see our children out there like that, we're at a critical mass because we're dealing with the unknown. We don't know with the climate of where things are. If something is triggered, then here come the bullets flying and all that. So it's not as harmless as it might seem. It truly isn't.
Yeah.
And so I think as parents, again, we have a huge responsibility on us if we are really serious about regaining our control and our power.
Yeah.
I think it's so hard to do, but I think that it definitely requires a framework. It definitely requires community. It definitely requires all those who are vetted and who love that child or those children. You know, a lot of things come into play. You know, when we talk about communication, we got to look at what triggers we dealing with that would even send our children out like that.
Yeah.
You know, what's going on, and of course, physician healed ourselves. We have to begin to look at ourselves and say, what these external triggers, is it something I said that I could have said in a different way when it comes to my own, you know, because some of our children out there, those children are angry. You have some out there that's just out there and happy to be out there and they can go home, but you got the majority of them are angry. And they have been let down on some level or disappointed on some kind of level. What does that look like? What triggers that? And I think, again, as communicators, who we are, again, as first responders and the parents, we must become better communicators as far as transferring information and as far as receiving information from our children so that we can begin to bridge this gap and, again, to regain control.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would like to point out in closing this session is that according to the Administration for Children and Families in America, this last year, over 437,000 children have been separated from their parents. So they are within the system, the government, statewide system, governmental system, foster care systems. And in the last 20 years, 9+ million children have passed through the child care foster systems.
Wow.
Those are the children that are also among children who are with their parents, that are friends or they're within the same society. They're children.
Yeah.
And they have been through some horror. So this is also very real in what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think about all the kids that you mentioned, the great number of them that have gone through the system, and many of them were in foster care. So, foster parents, we're talking to you too. If you can't be a foster parent because you need money. You have to be a foster parent because you care about these kids. And if you care about the kids that you foster, I'm talking specifically the foster parents, then treat them as your child and do the same things that we're asking you to do if they are yours by blood. Um, we have to have better parenting. We have to have better homes, better families for our children. And if you're not going to do that, then don't do it.
But can I say this too?
Yeah, please.
So that we can really start probably trying to wrap this up because we've been at it for a minute, but that if we are truly to be a village or be a community, in any village, they have the same value system. They pretty much eat the same kind of food, drink the same water, live out pretty much everybody on the same plane, same page to some degree. Now, because one of our problems that we have one set up in our homes, but when we send out into the community, we got a myriad of other things going on. So when we talk community and we talk about regaining our power, we have to look at how do we think culturally as a culture. What do we look like? What does this all look like? What does it all mean as a culture? Because I think then we are now in a position where we can start molding and shaping what that should look like, because it is culture. We're looking at that with all the other junk that's going on that we have to deal with on a daily basis. Culture, to me, carries a big stick.
Okay. They do.
Well, I think we also have to go back to actively involving our children in our home setup.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, do your children have chores? Do they know what they're supposed to do when they get home? So give your team the latitude to come up with their own checklist of things and then openly discuss it. Some things you can leave on, some things you might need to take off, but have that conversation with them. Determine what the priorities are. Set up a time goal for things to be accomplished. Like I said, we used to have a curfew. I don't know.
Yeah.
Some kids don't have a curfew. They come and go the way they want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Realistically, is that working in your family?
It's not.
The
most part.
Think of some practical things that can be done in the home. Delegate.
Yeah.
So you're not doing all of the work. My children each used to have a cook day. That way I knew, first of all, that they were going to be able to fend for themselves, but they were also learning skills also. Fast food can't be the answer all the time.
Right.
So if we review and go over the workflow in our house, and delegate who's doing what, who does the laundry,
And Jamila, how many of us actually sit down at the table together and even eat? If you think about that, something as simplistic as that, everybody sitting together, dinner is served at 5:00 and everybody better be here at 5:00 to sit down at this table, and it's a start on trying to pull this thing together and to make sense out of what's going on for us, as a community, as a family in our home. How do we, it's a big task. It's not small what we're talking about, but if we could plant a seed and start somewhere. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do. And that's what trust is all about. That we, with all the experience that we come to the table with, both in the classroom, outside of the classroom, in management, upper and lower, that we are saying here that we're not the cure-all and the wherewithal, but we do come with some possibilities and strategies that we've seen for us that has worked in our homes, in our community, in our school environments. So, because we could talk on and on and on, but it's just awesome that we talking now.